Hello students, welcome to the Analyst, dated 29th of October 2023. Today we'll look at 5 important articles from the Indian Express and the Hindu. The first article will be regarding the smartphone manufacturing in India. Then we'll take a look at the IT sector of India. Then we'll understand what is this ethics panel all about, and we'll understand the phenomena of cloud seeding. And lastly, we'll look at APEC. This is related to your prelims perspective. Let's start with the first article, that is smartphone manufacturing. Now, we'll be happy to know that India has become the second largest manufacturer of mobile phones in the entire world. And cumulatively, we have manufactured 2 billion mobile phones from 2014 to 2022. Now, this is in news because the Tata conglomerate, which is a salt to software conglomerate, has entered into something called as contract manufacturing. And contract manufacturing of what? Of mobile phones. Now, in this perspective, we must appreciate the feat that India has achieved in the smartphone manufacturing domain. So, what is the need of this contract manufacturing? The idea is that, let's say there is a giant like Apple, with a valuation of more than $2 to $3 trillion, and we have giants like, let's say, Samsung. Now, all these global giants, they will have demand in multiple countries, and one such demand will be in India also for both the companies. Now, if India would have to import all the devices of Apple and Samsung, what would happen is that manufacturing jobs will be created, let's say, in China or in Southeast Asia. So naturally, there will be a migration of capital, there will be migration of technology, and India, being a competitive country, will lose out on all these factors of manufacturing. And therefore, if we cannot create, let's say, an Apple domestically, what we can do is we can become part of the supply chain of the Apple conglomerate or supply chain of Samsung. And how do we become that? Let's say I am simply going for assembly of the phone. If I am going for the assembly of phone, let's say I am importing all the components. I am importing all the components. But over the period of time, what happens? Over the period of time, what will happen? That, let's say I am manufacturing 100%, I am importing. Then over the period of time, due to the flying geese model, and we'll understand what is the flying geese model. Due to this flying geese model, what will happen over the period of time? My simple mobile assembly operation will multiply with multiple ancillary industries. So I am going for mobile assembly. Now let's say a glass manufacturer, which is a OEM, original equipment manufacturer, might also migrate to India. Then let's say a fab factory, someone who is working on circuit designs, someone who is working on, let's say, semiconductors, someone who is, let's say, working on speakers, someone who is, let's say, working on cameras, they might also migrate. Or can I say that if I am calling Samsung and Apple a conglomerate, and I'm also calling Tata a conglomerate, then can I say that if Samsung decides to manufacture in India or to simply assemble in India, can it in successive year ask its own company called, let's say, Samsung Glass to come to India? Can it also ask Samsung Displays to come to India? So can I say that this will lead to a chain of migration of companies? And these are companies which are related. Now, let's understand flying geese. Let's say one big giant and another big giant, they are migrating to India. Let's say this is Samsung and this is Apple. And they want to make in India all their mobile phones. And especially the cutting edge mobile phones, the flagship. Let's say they are manufacturing 15 Pro Max in India. So that is the flagship smartphone that Apple has. So what will happen is that the smaller suppliers of these companies, as well as the competitors, will also try to vie to such market. Why? Because all of them will try to compete in the same market. They will also want to take the benefits that is accruing to, let's say, Samsung and Apple. through governmental support or through incentives. So all of them will create a flying geese model where flock of birds will gradually migrate to newer countries for newer opportunities. And why does such an opportunity get created in a country? Because of multiple reasons. So today we need such a manufacturing in India. We need such contract manufacturing in India. Why? Because we have seen the success story of China in the city called Shenzhen. The Shenzhen SEZ is known globally for its electronic manufacturing. And mind you, whenever we are talking about, let's say, smartphone manufacturing, can I say this smartphone manufacturing is nothing but a smaller part of the larger pie, which is called the electronic manufacturing? So the way companies were dragging their sister concerns, the way companies were dragging their competitors to India, can I say that the mobile manufacturing, the smartphone manufacturing, along with the companies related to mobile phone, they will also attract companies which are related to, let's say, fridge. Let's say someone is manufacturing air conditioners. So all types of heavy electronics, smaller electronics, precision electronics, all types of electronics will be attracted. And can I also say that this will also create the idea of scale of economy. So can I have such, let's say, parks, electronic parks, where multiple such companies will use some common infrastructure and will use some common connectivity, let's say a road to a port, and they might adopt the export oriented economy. So today we need good jobs, we need high paying jobs, we need to become part of the global supply chain. We can replace China, we can compete with China, and we can compete with any country which is manufacturing. Why? Because we have the advantage of cheap labor. We have the advantage of demand, high demand. We have the idea of also democracy. So clear policy making is there. What else? Then we have a good internet penetration. So all such factors will today create a suitable, a fruitable ground for Make in India, for Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, what are the benefits that will accrue from this? So A, directly, if we are manufacturing in India, we are going for job creation. These job creation will be direct, some will be indirect, and they will also be in ancillary industries. So any industry which is supplying to the main industry will also attract jobs. Some jobs will be created indirectly. Let's say the IT sector is dependent upon the hardware sector, and if there is high level of manufacturing, then what will happen? The service sector will source their components locally, and if they are sourcing their components locally, their margins of profit might increase. This may give them further revenue leverage to recruit more people. So all of this job creation will more be direct, but majority of it will be in indirect forms. Furthermore, over the period of time, what happens when we are assembling a mobile phone? We are going for low skill job. So let's say we are working in an assembly factory. So it is a low skill job, but some skill has to be there, and it is also not a very high paying job. But if Samsung R&D shifts its base, its display base, its display R&D is done in Noida, and the factory of display is also in Noida. So what will happen? A lot of electronic engineer from IITs will start working in Noida. Simultaneously, there is volume of job creation. So here you have high quality of job creation, here you have high quantity of job creation. So that will happen at the same company. Then naturally, if I am producing so much, I will consume in India and I will export it. So I will earn in dollars. Naturally, I am targeting earning in dollars, and that is why India is creating these SEZs, these IT parks, these manufacturing clusters. Why are we creating this? So that we can export more and we can earn more. Then the multiplier effects, which we understood that one company might attract another company, then that single company might attract further original equipment manufacturers, and let's say one leg of the economy is running very fast. So what happens? This sector will start dragging the other sectors forward. Any linkage with a particular industry, let's say this is the industry, and in a hub and spoke model, it is connected to other smaller industries. So all these industries will benefit from the growth of the mother industry. Then diffusion to other sectors. The best example of diffusion that we see today in India is the metro example. So what came during the Commonwealth Games in Delhi? So Delhi Metro came as a singular model in a singular city. Now what we have done, we have massified the technology. We have also modified the technology, and you can very well see the Meerut RRTS, or we can see the Vande Bharat Express, and you will see multiple similar technologies are now being used. So there is cross-functional application of technology, and you have also created engineers, you have also created skilled people who can now work on similar coach factories, who can work on similar designs. Why? Because they have earlier been exposed to technology. So technology diffusion is extremely important. Simultaneously, we also have tech transfers. So a lot of times when a company is giving you contract manufacturing, it might happen that along with the know-how, the skill, you are also getting some state-of-the-art technology, or at least you are getting exposure to the state-of-art technology. And this also reduces the royalties that we have to pay. So if I am importing any good, I am paying hefty royalties. But let's say I become part of the global supply chain, then what happens? The proportion of royalties that I have to pay to the person, to the company who is holding that technology is also decreasing. And this is naturally a push towards Atmanirbhar Bharat. And it does not mean that I am only I am substituting my import. But today, I am manufacturing what I can manufacture in India, and I want to manufacture it in India for India as well as for the world. Now, when we look at the factors and when we look at the traction of growth, what do we see? We see an exponential rise, and I can tell this that this exponential rise eventually one day it will fulfill my domestic demand. After fulfillment of this domestic demand, this excessive capacity will naturally go towards the world. And any country, any similarly situated country, let's say in South Asia or let's say in Africa, who wants to massify mobile phones, the use of cheap smartphones, massify the use of 4G, 5G. So all these ancillary sectors, anyone who wants to replicate the model that India has done will naturally have a demand, and that demand can be easily met by the manufacturing capacity created in India. Now, when we are looking at the factors, so tariffs are also contributing it. So somehow we are gradually increasing our tariffs on imports. So imports of what? Let's say finished goods today. So I do not want to import a finished mobile phone into India. Today I want assembly in India. But over the period of time, what will happen? I will also gradually, as Government of India will gradually force more and more companies, more and more original equipment manufacturers to come to India and manufacture here. All the companies will be first requested. Then with tariffs, what happens? They are given a competitive advantage. That, let's say you are manufacturing in India, you are part of the PLI scheme. If you are not manufacturing in India, you will have to pay hefty tariffs. So what will happen? Either of the two conditions. Either the company will come and manufacture in India, or some domestic company might create a JV with that company and then bring that company to India. And that is happening in not only this sector but all sectors. Then if we are looking at cheap labor and we are looking at skilled labor force. Why skilled labor force? Because inertia has been created by, let's say, the first movers. And the first mover was Nokia back in Chennai. So the Chennai plant gave India the exposure towards smartphone manufacturing. A company of Finland was manufacturing in Chennai, and then exporting to the world. Now what has happened? All the major global companies, including Google, so Google will manufacture its Pixel, Apple will manufacture its flagship, then Samsung is manufacturing its Tab, its flagship phones. So major companies of the world, they are coming to India and they are manufacturing. So this inertia will lead to what? This inertia will lead to further diffusion of the skill sets to, let's say, smaller companies, to, let's say, startup. So a person, let's say, was working for Samsung, and that person, let's say, migrates to Lava. So what they will do? They will not only work to, they will not only pass the know-how, but they will also pass how the management is done, how the research and development is being conducted in these large global companies. Then there is the production linked incentive. Then there is naturally a push for semiconductors, hardware, electronic assembly, glass manufacturing, display manufacturing. So the government push is also quite certain in this area. Now, when we look at the geopolitical issues, we see that there is a clear China plus one strategy post-COVID. Why? Because no country would like to depend on a single country for its supply chain post-COVID, post-pandemic. Then we are looking at the successful examples of Micromax, Lava, Samsung Noida R&D, Apple Foxconn, and we have also seen some domestic giants like Dixon Technology. So Dixon Technology would manufacture or assemble all the air conditioners, washing machine, etc. Now these companies who were earlier going into more heavier electronic, or essentially they were going into AC and fridge, they are also now, with their manufacturing expertise, they are also vying to enter into this market. Now what is the impact? So if we look at the impact, the clear winner is exports. So $300 million to $11 billion. So quantum leap is there. Then imports have decreased from $3.6 billion to $1.6 billion in 2023. And from 300 million smartphones to 60 million produced, and 300 is in 2021 and 60 is in 2014. And we must appreciate that the cumulative of 2014 to 2022 is 2 billion. So here we can say that there is an exponential rise, and this is quite visible in this data, where the manufacturing or assembly in India was stagnating and it suddenly picked up. And over the period of time, this has further increased with the PLI scheme and with the China plus one policy. Now, there are some issues which are pointed by multiple economists, and more particularly, the counter opinion comes from ex-governor of RBI, Raghuram Rajan. He is saying that India is merely assembling. We are merely assembling, and largely it is the import of display screens, cameras, batteries, printed circuit boards, semiconductors, and we are finally only going for low skill and low wage assembly, and this will not create a multiplier effect, and these are not well paying jobs. Let's look at the second article. So the context is that Indian companies are more and more moving towards IT, and they are hiring more and more tech people. Now let's understand the IT sector. So whenever we are looking at the IT sector, we are looking at software, we are looking at hardware, we are looking at testing, we are looking at networking, and over the period of time, this industry has diversified. So can I say today that a lot of industries are dependent on the IT industry, on the IT infrastructure, but this IT industry has given the impetus to multiple industries, and many industries have bounced back and they have grown. But one particular industry has grown on the plinth of this IT industry, but has come to a comparable size, and we are talking about the startup ecosystem. The startup ecosystem that we see today in form of Ola, Uber, all the decacons, unicorns that we see, whether we are talking about Swiggy, Zomato, they are built upon the ideas of data, upon IT, upon fintech. So can I say that the IT sector has become the mother of multiple new sectors. And being the mother, now multiple sectors are now competing also in size with the IT sector. But can I say that IT sector has also created the multiplier effect? And this multiplier effect can also be seen in the form of good quality job creation, and more particularly in our urban centers. It has also led to creation of vertical use of space. Can I also say that it has given the space to create these IT parks, and it has somehow balanced India's imports in terms of oil imports. So if we are importing a lot of oil, crude oil, so we are exporting in terms of IT based services. Now the rapid growth of IT sector depends upon good quality skilled personnel, and these good quality skilled personnel are coming from the IITs, they are coming from triple ITs, they are coming from massive engineering colleges all across the country. Then it is because of the increasing mobile and computer usage, and mobile particularly has massified. So we skipped the generation of, let's say, personal computer. We skipped, let's say, laptop. We did not. The laptop did not massify itself. Not all of us will have laptops or a personal computer. But what has happened with a mobile phone is that it has democratized this digital space. And we have all become a part of the digital economy. And the IT industry has created this digital space, and it breathes upon this digital space also. So they feed into each other. Then we have cheaper tariffs. What happened with Jio? And later on, what has become a triopoly today? And with this triopoly, what has happened is that competitive tariff pricing, which has created one of the cheapest internet in the world. And again, we have massified the number of internet users, and the active internet users are as high as 80 crore. 800 million people are now continuously dependent on internet, and we are also migrating towards 5G. So 4G happened very quickly. The infrastructure took time, but the rollout of 4G happened very quickly, and right now we are going towards 5G with an exponential pace. Now let's look at some of the data. So the growth, year on year growth, is in double digits. So whenever we are looking at smartphone manufacturing, again double digit growth, more than 20% of growth. And when we are looking at IT industry, again more than 12% of growth. And it contributes to 8 to 9% of GDP, will only increase to 10%. And if I can put it in some perspective, then a company like Tata Consultancy Services has a valuation of $100 billion. Now, TCS in itself has the capacity to become a $1 trillion economy. That means all the large giants of India, that is Infosys, TCS, Wipro, they are now vying to compete with the global giants, that is the MANG. So that is the potential that the IT sector carries. Now the revenue was as high as $227 billion. And with a yearly growth of 15%. Now we must appreciate that the size of the software product industry will only become $100 billion by 2025. And this is in accordance with NASSCOM. Now this industry gives job to around 5 lakh people, out of which 2 lakh women only were recruited in 2022. So yearly, if you're creating 4 to 5 lakh jobs and you are having a very balanced sex ratio, then it is a sector which is growing not only in high speed but also equitably. Now, let's look at the pillars. So the pillars on which IT sector rests is that we are providing global IT services. So global IT services provided by Wipro, by TCS, by Infosys. Then we are also becoming the outsourcing hub. So outsourcing for whom? For any company which was erstwhile working in Western Europe, which was working in, let's say, US. So let's say Accenture, which is a US based company, it wants to create IT parks in Bengaluru, or it wants to create an IT park in Mysore, or it wants to create an IT park in, let's say, Kolkata or Gurugram. So large giants like IBM, Accenture, they are also here. What else? Then we have gone for massification of mobile, and with massification of mobile, there is massification of app development. Similarly, the startup ecosystem. So the startup ecosystem, can I say edtech, where we have decacons like Baiju, we have Unacademy, we have, let's say, PW. What else? Do we have fintech giants? Fintech giants, let's Paytm. And can I say that all of this is also because of the push of government towards Aadhaar stacks, which created the backdrop for the fintech revolution. Whenever we are talking about postpay, we are talking about Bharat QR, the QR code scanning, the financial transaction, the digitization in terms of finance. So all of that, whether we are talking about our participation in markets, so online brokerage, so all these sectors are powered by the core of IT industry. Then upcoming ONDC will again massify this further, making it a more easy and making it more competitive for not only all the players, whether it is retail players and the large players, but also making it affordable for the consumers. So again, backed by the IT infrastructure. Now, what are the challenges? So the challenges come in the form of skill shortages. And let's say we are always going for the outsourcing business. We are always taking projects from foreign companies. Then what happens is that we have developed an inertia of not growing our own software, of not working on newer technologies. And therefore, there is a skill shortage that we see today in machine learning, in data, in artificial intelligence. So the emerging sectors, we need skills. Then there is extensive competition. So India succeeded in IT sector. It succeeded the way China succeeded in manufacturing. But now what these countries are doing, that countries of Southeast Asia and China and all competing countries where there is labor advantage, so they are now vying for a pie in the global IT exports. So countries like Philippines, Vietnam, etc. Then we have the growing protectionism. Protectionism in the form of, let's say, carbon tax. Protectionism, let's say, higher tariffs. Protectionism in form of, let's say, visa. So all these issues are the challenges, and therefore we cannot completely depend on exports only. We must also look at creating an economy which feeds the IT sector of India as well. So the demand should not only be from the foreign countries, but it should also be some local demand. Then what are the reforms that are required? That IT sector, we have seen that IT sector is mostly using urbanized space. But this IT sector is developing mostly in tier 1 cities. Now what do we need is to migrate them or to diffuse them towards tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Simultaneously, there is also need of skilling. Skilling to create the personnel. Not all the students, not all the aspirants who wants to get a job here can afford, let's say, going for a 4-year degree. And therefore, if there is good collaboration between, let's say, the people who are seeking such job and the companies in form of skilling, so that these people, once they are skilled, they can be absorbed in this company without having, let's say, 4-year degrees. That is the need of the hour. Furthermore, there is a divide that has been created. The divide between India and Bharat when we talk about the IT infrastructure. So that must also be bridged by diffusion to tier 3 cities. Then we must also focus continuously on research and development, and in turn creation of patents. So more research and development, and more research and development labs like the Samsung labs will in turn foster more patent creation, and this will ensure that we have the cutting edge technology rather than all the time we are dependent on technology transfers or for diffusion from bigger companies which are global companies. Now, the ethics panel has asked a member of parliament to appear before itself. Let's understand the facts. So, this is related with the cash for query issue that is going on. So, it is alleged that a member of parliament was asking questions before the parliament by accepting some money in return. And these questions were targeted on a particular conglomerate, and these questions were coming from competing companies as well as some political parties. So, rather than directly asking a question, these questions were being given from some other sources. There are also allegations that the login details of this particular MP was also shared with this company personnel. Now, the accused MP has been asked to come before the committee which will conduct its proceedings, and based upon these proceedings, it will collect some evidence. So here the committee, which is part of the parliament, will act as a quasi judicial body, and after collection of evidence, after looking at everyone, after looking at statements of all the witnesses, it will come out with some recommendations. Now these recommendations are not binding on the parliament. Now let's look at the ethics panel or the ethics committee. So the ethics committee, if it finds merit in the complaint, it can make recommendations for punishment, and usually the punishment is about suspension. Now, the final decision on this, let's say punishment, will be taken by the House and not alone by the Speaker and not alone by the, so the ethics committee or the Speaker alone will not take the decision on the suspension, rather the House will decide. Once they have decided, it can only be challenged in the court on the basis of unconstitutionality, gross illegality, or denial of natural justice, that is principles of natural justice. Now, both the houses, that is the Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha, it has the ethics panel. Now, this particular issue is concerning with the Lok Sabha, and here the Speaker would nominate the members for a 1-year term, and the complaint can be given by any person interested to a member of parliament. It can be forwarded to a member of parliament who can then report this to the ethics committee, or it can directly come from a member of parliament to the ethics committee. Now, when it comes through other sources, if I go for a complaint, then I would have to give a sworn affidavit. I have to swear that I am saying and I am not doing any malicious, I am not producing any malicious content. It is right to my knowledge. But the MP, if he is going for the same, he is not required to do it. Now, based upon such complaint, the Speaker might refer these complaints to this ethics committee, and after preliminary inquiry, it will give some recommendations, and these recommendations will only be binding once the House certifies the same, and it will not be on the basis of the recommendations only or on the basis of the decision of the Speaker only. So Speaker's role is only to refer the matter once a complaint comes to him, and after it has gone to the committee, the recommendation will only be binding if the House of the People, that is the Lok Sabha, they agree to the decision of or it might only agree to parts of the recommendation. Let's understand cloud seeding, and it is in news because IITM demonstrates cloud seeding can produce rainfall. Let's understand cloud seeding. Now, whenever we are going for rainfall, we need a hygroscopic nuclei. So let's say there is a nuclei, let's say there is a dust particle. So this dust particle will be attracting a lot of water molecules. Now, once these water molecules, they start coagulating around this dust particle. So over the period of time, what happens? It builds in size. And what do we mean by hygroscopic? That means which is attracting H2O. So it attracts H2O molecule. Now, what happens is that this dust particle will start attracting more and more water molecules and it will grow in size. And once it grows in size, then what happens? There will be too much of gravity. There will be the weight acting towards the surface. Now, think about it. Let's say there is a lot of heat. A lot of heat will do what? It will create a lot of water vapor. And this water vapor will start rising. This rise is to go for adiabatic cooling. So as water is rising, as this water vapor is rising, what will happen? It will gradually cool down. Once it is cooling down, what it will do? It will condense. But this rise will be continuous. Now think about it. This water molecule is in the way of this rising air or rising water vapor. So what will happen? This particle will also be taken up. But let's say this particle is taken up. So what happens over the period of time? It will cool further. Now please appreciate that as we go up, temperature decreases. And whenever we have a cold air mass or cold air packet, its moisture holding capacity is low. So air can hold more moisture at the surface than on the level of clouds. So there is a limit till which the particle can go, after which it becomes too heavy and starts to fall again. So over the period of time, what will happen? This particle will go up and down, up and down, up and down. And in this process, it will grow in such a size that now this convection current which is rising from the surface of earth because of the insolation. So solar insolation is falling down, water vapor is created, the water vapor is rising, it is rising to cool down, and this water vapor is dragging this water molecule up and down, up and down. And because of this up and down movement, and because we have a hygroscopic molecule, nuclei in between, so what happens due to this? It grows in such a size that it is not able to sustain in air and therefore it falls as water droplets. And this is your rain. Now, let's say there is no reason for rain. Let's say there is a dry spell and I want to create artificial rain. Why? Because I want to aid my farming. Let's say I have created a specialized crop, or let's say there is a water stress, there is water scarcity. People don't have drinking water. People don't have irrigation water. So what do I need? I need some form of rain. And I want widespread rain. I do not want, let's say, 2 liters of water. I want widespread rain to a region where we have crops which are waiting for rain. So rain-fed regions, if they require, let's say, some amount of rainfall, why? Because they are facing some scarcity. Let's say there is a El Nino year. Then we can go for cloud seeding. Now, essentially what we are doing in cloud seeding, we are essentially seeding the cloud. That means we are transferring some hygroscopic nuclei to the cloud. And at times we are also passing some moisture also. Why we are doing this? Because this will aid condensation. This will aid cloud formation. And if somehow we are able to create rain-bearing nimbus clouds, then it will lead to some amount of rain. So we can do this in form of, let's say, going for flares or explosives into lower level clouds, or we can go for static cloud seeding by inducing silver iodide there, Or we can go for dynamic cloud seeding, where we stimulate vertical air currents. So can I say that if I create 2 to 3 funnels on our surface of earth and I continuously keep supplying water vapor, so over the period of time, can I say at least I can create few clouds, nimbus clouds? So I am mimicking nature. I am trying to create these clouds. And that is why there are different methods of cloud seeding. One is your static cloud seeding, where you are simply going for hygroscopic nuclei like silver iodide. On the other hand, I am mimicking the convection currents, that is dynamic cloud seeding. And then we have the hygroscopic cloud seeding, where simply I am dispersing salts via flares and explosive into lower level clouds, so that I can get that rain as early as possible. So I know that there is moisture. So what I'll do, I will go for a flare here. This flare will distribute a lot of salts in this particular cloud, and so this will aid condensation and will lead to precipitation. That is simply cloud seeding. Let's look at Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. Now Biden and Xi to meet on APEC summit sidelines in November. Let's look at APEC, and this is the map. So it is comprising of 21 nations, which was formed in 1989, and it is about economic cooperation. And India is not a member, but is an observer. India wanted and applied for APEC membership, but it did not get it. Why? Because it is not sharing the ocean. And this is your Pacific Ocean. So India, because it is not sharing the ocean, it did not get the membership, but it became the observer. And the APEC becomes important, and India wishes to get its membership. Why? Because India is looking at the largest strategic goal of Indo-Pacific. Now we must appreciate that this comprises of around 3 billion people and 60% of GDP, along with 50% of global trade. And the APEC region becomes important. Why? Because this is also the region of conflict between one pole, that is the US or West, versus the littorals like Russia and China. Simultaneously, we are also looking at a multiple trade participations and trade groupings. So we have the RCEP. So the major powers here, they are trying to vie for larger economic cooperation as well as larger trade groups, so that they can dominate this region. And this is the traditional dominance region of the US, which is now continuously being challenged by the by the emerging power, that is China, in form of bulldozing its own way through the South China Sea as well as the East China Sea, as well as bribing and getting smaller countries trapped through the debt trap diplomacy. Now, this also works for global economic integration, newer market opportunities, and balancing the economic ambitions between US and China. Thank you so much. I hope it helped.